Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. And I want to start out this episode just with a sincere thank you to anyone who's watching. We put out our first episode in this series earlier today. It's Wednesday night as I am making this video, and it'll be posted on Thursday morning. And we've got close to 350 people who have watched the video, lots of comments, lots of thumbs up. I know in the whole world of YouTube that's nothing to be excited about, but for a small channel like mine, really appreciate the enthusiastic reaction to this first video in the Red series. As I've said previously on this channel, without people viewing it like you, I would just be a crazy middle-aged man talking to himself and abandoning his family duties while doing so. So I really do sincerely appreciate everyone who watches, whether or not you comment, whether or not you subscribe, whether or not you give us a thumbs up or not. But I appreciate all those other things as well also. But thank you so much for watching the previous video and watching this video. And turned out I just needed to stop playing with the Yankees to find people interested in what I was doing in OOTP. So I will keep that in mind in the future. Turning our attention back to the Reds and the game that we're playing, we're off to a decent start. We've got a 15-14 record. I don't mean to offend any of you who happen to be watching who are Cincinnati Reds fans, but I don't think there's a lot of talent on this team, and I've traded away some of that talent over the month that I've been in charge. So the fact that there is a 15-14 record at this point is a bit of a surprise to me. You can see we're only half a game out in the division, and we're only half a game out of the wild card right now. I don't think this team is going to be playing winning baseball at the end of the year. Honestly, if we get 75, 76, 77 wins, I would view that as a pretty big victory, even with the decent start that we're off to. But hopefully we can continue to play close to 500 ball, keep fan interest higher than it was when the season started. And hopefully I can also continue to make some trades to open up a little bit more money in the budget. Not a critical requirement. Right now we are on pace, we're on pace to make about $6.5 million in the budget, but we're projected to only make a profit of a little over $1 million. So we are underperforming where we're budgeted right now. And if we can cut some more money out of our expenses over the next few months, I think that if we're able to play that close to 500 ball, keep fan interest somewhere in the 50s, and also deliver a little bit more money than expected to the Castellinis in terms of the budget, then maybe we can get a little bump in the budget for next year and set ourselves up to be able to be a little more competitive. And as I mentioned, we have been pretty busy in the trade market, made some trades that at least one of them proved to be pretty controversial in the comment section of the previous video. We picked up Jared Kelenic in a trade from Seattle, trading away 32-year-old catcher, traded away a 32-year-old left fielder, got first baseman Alex Kirilloff back, traded away a 32-year-old relief pitcher Buck Farmer, got a young starting pitching prospect Ian Anderson in return, and then most controversially, we traded away another 32-year-old first baseman Will Myers. That was not the controversial part, though. We did trade away Michael Ciani, who's certainly an interesting prospect in the Cincinnati organization. I get the comments from some of you in the previous episode that he is a potentially incredible defensive outfielder, and it sounds like some of you have had a lot of success with him in your playthroughs. and I admit that my scouting accuracy on him is very low, so my dismissiveness of his bat may be a little premature. I'm also not going to be playing this sim for a period of 5 to 10 years, most likely. We'll be moving on to our long-term sim probably some point in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So hopefully it's not going to come back to bite me that much over the amount of time that I'll be playing this simulation, but certainly get the point that might be a little unrealistic in a team like Cincinnati trading away a potentially outstanding defensive player at a premium defensive position who's only 23 years old and under control of the organization for another 6 to 7 years. So may have been a little aggressive with that trade, but it is what it is at this point. And taking a look at the Reds roster as we begin the month of May here, I think one of our goals may be to finish this season with only a couple guys who are in their 30s on our roster. I'm not going to try to trade away Joey Votto. I'm not a monster. And Kurt Casale is a pretty solid backup catcher, so I could see him sticking around. But we've got a lot of middle relievers in their early 30s, Derek Law, Fernando Cruz, Luis Cessa. And then we did sign Chris Archer as a free agent simply because he was a little bit popular, and we got a 1-point boost to our fan interest when we did that. But you can see that although his performance on the field has been decent, when we look at his overall ratings, he certainly doesn't have a future with our organization. And we've also still got 6 pitchers who are either on the injured list or who are on rehab assignments. So I think to the extent we can clear out some of those guys in their 30s who are, in many cases, still making the major league minimum, so it's not like there's a ton of money involved in any of them. But if we can clear those players off of our 40-man roster, pick up minor leaguers who aren't making really any money in return, that will get this roster younger, maybe position us slightly better for the future, and it'll also help us in our goal to get our total money available up to a slightly positive number, which should help with the ultimate financial results for the team this season. And it also will give us the opportunity as we get further into the game and closer to the 2023 All-Star break to potentially bring somebody on board who's making a little bit of money, who may be a guy that we ultimately want to start trying to build this thing around for the future. And we've simmed ahead a few days. Record is 17-15, so we're still certainly hanging in there. And we did end up shopping Luis Cessa with a willingness to retain half of his $2.6 million contract. And this was something I talked about in the previous episode, and there was some commentary on the comments. There's been a lot of discussion on some of the OOTP message boards about how the Yankees are undervaluing Oswaldo Cabrera, or more accurately, the AI for the Yankees in the game may be undervaluing Oswaldo Cabrera a bit, and thoughts that maybe it had been fixed. And I don't know whether this is a sign that maybe it hasn't been fixed or just a random thing or not, but shopping the 31-year-old reliever Cessa, the only offer that we received through all of Major League Baseball was Cabrera from the Yankees, the 24-year-old utility player, decent bat, a little bit of speed, can play a bunch of positions. I think he's exactly the type of player that the Reds would be looking to bring on board, at least that my Reds would be looking to bring on board. Looks like the Yankees actually have him down in AAA this year. I'm going to certainly try to do that trade. We've got to retain 50% of his contract. The Yankees told us they would make this offer It's not going to shock me if they come back and say, oh, we were just kidding. You need to add in this other big player instead. But I'm at least going to submit that offer to them and find out what they have to say, since they were the ones who put it on the board. And the Yankees do say almost. And they want to do the deal. And they're not looking for a big-time prospect in return. Since I'm so focused on money with the Reds, I am going to come back to them with a little less retention of Cessa's contract. We'll put in Jake Gazzo, 26-year-old with a prickly disposition who is not a big-time prospect at this point. Guessing he's not even listed as a prospect, and I did forget what team he was playing for. Oh, perfect. It looks like he was in A-ball with the Tortugas. If we drop our retention of Cessa down to 35%, but we do add in Jake Gazzo, what will the Yankees think of that? And we're still almost at 35%. Once again, the Yankees not looking for big-time prospects from us. We'll include Juventino Gonzalez, who's down in the ACL for us. So we will respond, discuss again with the Yankees. Although I've already forgotten who we were going to. Juventino Gonzalez. All right, we will discuss that again. So we'll add Juventino Gonzalez in, knock our retention from Cessa down to 20%. If the Yankees will just be looking for one more non-prospect to make the deal work at 20% for Cessa, I think at this point we will just pull the trigger on that deal and hopefully get her done. And we've almost got the deal done now, so I'm not going to push our luck anymore. We are going to include Elkin Chirinos, and we're going to go ahead and complete the trade. Our money will improve by almost $1.1 million. And we'll bring in a guy who I think could be a pretty important utility player for the Reds over the next several seasons. So we're going to go ahead and complete that deal, open up a little more money. We've also helped our trade reputation by acting honorably back and forth with the Yankees and not backing out on something we had agreed to. So I like the deal. And to make room for Cabrera on the Major League roster, we are actually going to send down Kelnick, who we picked up in that earlier trade. He's looking like he's better than we thought he was going to be when we picked him up. It's just that we haven't been able to get him consistent playing time in Cincinnati, although he is still hitting .381 and 21 at-bats. A little crazy to send him down. But I want him playing every day at this point in his development. And for whatever reason, it does not seem like that is what David Bell's plan is for him. He just doesn't want to play him. And obviously I can overrule him and probably will overrule him later in the year, but we're doing what we need to do on the field at this point, so I'm going to trust the judgment of Mr. Bell at this point. And trading away the reliever there does get us in a position where we can now at least promote Luke Weaver, who only has 5 days left in his rehab assignment, back up to the majors. You can see that we've still got 2 other pitchers on rehab assignments now, so probably going to look to ship away a few other pitchers in their 30s in the coming days if we can. With Cabrera on the team, let's see what, if anything, Bell wants to do with him. And he wants to put Cabrera as a second baseman. And he's actually going to make him our starting second baseman over Jonathan India, who moves to DH. And if you remember from the last episode, all Jonathan India did in the month of April was win National League Batter of the Month. He's hitting .312 with 8 home runs. But he's definitely not as good defensively as Cabrera. As long as Cabrera's playing every day, getting those at-bats to continue hopefully helping his development, happy with it. Because he does, at least according to our scout, admittedly with very low accuracy. So since he's now on board, we'll request a scouting report and get to know our new second baseman a little better. But we think there is still potential for him to improve his contact and his home run power a bit, as well as potential for some pretty significant improvement in his eye. So hopefully with the good coaching staff that we've built and Oswaldo being out there playing almost every day, we'll be able to harness that development. And I mentioned we were going to look to get some more veteran pitchers going. I think Tony Santillan, only 26 years old, is coming off or starting that rehab assignment, coming off of an injury. Really good stuff. I just don't love pitchers with abysmal control. I just can't stand the walks. And at the major league level, he's walked 33 batters in his career so far in about 63 innings pitched. So I think that's always going to be an issue with him. And we can bring on a 24-year-old minor leaguer, Huascar Inoa. Doesn't necessarily look like he's going to be a big-time pitcher, but he's not yet 25 years old, going to be out for another 10 to 11 months with Tommy John surgery. But if we are to make this trade, we're going to, again, clear some more money off of our payroll by getting another guy who's on the 40-man roster making the major league minimum off of the team. So we're going to at least go ahead and submit that offer and see where it goes. And we've also gotten very similar set of offers. In fact, I think it might be the exact same set of offers for Derek Law, 32, soon to be 33-year-old reliever. This one, I don't want to say hurts because I'm willing to do it, but he's a pretty useful pitcher who has got a nice arsenal. He's put up a 3.12 ERA for us, but he's not a big part of this team's future. He's a generic right-handed reliever. We're going to end up basically getting nothing for him because Inoa, we've already made an offer to. Hopefully we'll get that trade done. It's basically just to get some more salary off the books. So we'll take on Andu Suarez from the Cardinals, who's on a minor league contract. Don't love his personality. Quite honestly, we might just cut him right when we get him. But at least we're getting the money for D-Law's contract off of our books. So we're going to go ahead and at least offer that trade and see what the Cardinals say in response to that one as well. And we got a couple almosts where we once again have to offer in a non-prospect to get the deal done. It is kind of interesting in this version of OOTP 24. Typically in the previous versions, when you had the list of players that were being offered to you when you shopped a person, I don't know that I can really ever remember a situation where if you just made that offer to the team for one of the players that they put up, where they wouldn't just come back and say, yeah, it's a done deal, let's do it. And it seems like almost all the time here in OOTP 24, they're coming back and saying, oh, we'll do it, but you got to throw in this horrible crap prospect also to make us want to do it. So I guess that makes the negotiations a little more challenging, which I think is always good when you're playing as a human against AI. But honestly, when it's prospects that are really non-prospects as the players that you need to throw in to get the deals done, it's not really adding a significant level or even a material level of difficulty as far as I'm concerned. So we ended up throwing in non-prospects to both deals, and you can see we're almost to the point where we actually have money available, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for us. So we're going to keep kind of churning through some of these pictures. I know this probably is not the most exciting thing to be watching, so if you're still watching at this point, I really do appreciate it. But we're trying to get younger, and we're just trying to put a decent financial performance up for the Reds here in 2023 to hopefully inspire the Castellinis with a record of close to 500, better fan interest, and a somewhat profitable year that they can invest a little bit more into our budget for 2024. And now, since we're so close to having positive money, we're just desperately trying to do anything to get a little more money off the books. Justin Dunn is a 27, soon to be 28-year-old, out with a sore shoulder, has missed the whole season thus far. Pretty good personality, quite honestly. We admittedly have low scouting accuracy on him, but doesn't really have a profile that suggests he's ever going to be a big-time major league pitcher. And if we can get the bulk of that contract off of the books, since we're still only on May 12th, I think we will be positive. The Yankees are offering Willie Calhoun, not a guy that we're going to be building around for the long term at the age of 28. Does give us some organizational depth in the outfield for AAA, and most importantly for our purposes right now, he's on a minor league contract. So we're going to go ahead and make that offer, and you can see we would be... Actually, it looks like we already are positive money-wise, and we are building quite a good trade reputation with all of these silly little trades that we've been making. So we're going to go ahead and submit that offer to the Yankees and see where things go. And once again, we get an almost back, have to add in a non-prospect. It is what it is at this point. We'll add in Manuel Cachut, 25-year-old pitcher down in the DSL. Not a big part of our organization. We're going to go ahead and complete the trade, bring Willie Calhoun on board. Our trade reputation is getting to excellent levels at this point. And as I've talked about, most importantly, we now have money available. We're on pace to make over $5 million this year. So, and we're 20-18. I know I haven't been spending much time as we get here close to midway through May on how the Reds have actually been performing on the field, but we're maintaining a record a little bit above 500. Take a look at the standings, and still half a game out in the Central Division, and we're tied for the final wild card spot now with the Brewers, because either the Dodgers or the Diamondbacks would actually be the NL West winner. So we are somehow tied for a wild card here as we approach the middle of the month of May, despite the fact that really our primary goal in this playthrough thus far has just been trading away any player we can who's on the wrong side of 30 for whatever people will give us in return. And we've got another deal done, and we've got another loose end from the previous episode maybe figured out. You may remember that we proposed a couple of trades to the Dodgers where Ivan Castillo was the player they were looking for in return, and they never responded to us. We've made an offer now for Chris Archer and a minor league prospect, and they did actually respond to us, so not sure exactly what was going on there yesterday, but looks like we can get a deal done. The fans, given that Archer is locally popular, won't be thrilled that we take him off the team, and given his high work ethic and intelligence and his prankster personality, he's not the worst guy to have in the locker room, but he's obviously not a part of our future. And we've gotten enough of a bump in fan interest from our good play so far that I think I'd rather get him off of the team right now free up a little bit more money that we can potentially use when we get closer to the trade deadline to bring on someone who might be a part of this team for the future and potentially fill an important role for us. So I think we're going to go ahead and move on from Chris Archer as well. So we can add in the minor league reliever Brian Diaz in addition to the reliever Brody Jesse and get this deal done. Overall money will improve by another $1 million. We'll go ahead and complete the trade. It doesn't actually even look like the fans reacted that negatively to it yet. So maybe the fans... Oh, and this actually would be a nice improvement in OOTP 24 that I have sometimes railed against in OOTP 23 when I did my long-term playthrough there, where sometimes when you trade away a veteran who's not a big contributor to the team and they happen to be popular, you take a hit to fan interest. Doesn't look like we actually took one with the trade of Archer, so if there's a little more nuance in how that dynamic works, I think that's actually a pretty positive thing potentially for OOTP 24. And you can see now we've got almost $2 million to spend, so particularly when we get another couple of months into this playthrough in mid-July, we could actually bring on a little bit of salary. And again, I don't know that it's going to be bringing on salary to help us win this year, but if we can bring on some salary, being a guy who's making close to the major league minimum, or maybe a established veteran in his late 20s or early 30s who we think could fill a role on our team for the future, who's not making a ton of money, there could be an opportunity for us to start actually building the roster that we want for this team in 2024, rather than just shedding players in their 30s and shedding salary at this point. But with the fact that we have now moved on from Mr. Archer, that does leave us with a situation where the only pitcher we have in the 30s, and we do need to add another pitcher now to our team, is Fernando Cruz. He has such a solid profile with 3 really good pitches, plus stuff, plus movement, decent control, making the major league minimum, 3 more option years left, going to be making the major league minimum next year. And he's also pitched incredibly well this year with a 1.42 ERA, 1.23 ERA in limited action last year, that he could be an important part of the Cincinnati bullpen for the next few seasons. So we are not going to move on from him, even though he is over that 30 and over threshold I had talked about not all that long ago. Looking at the lineups, Cessa and Votto are the only above 30 players there. So 26-man roster with only 3 players who aren't in their 20s. I don't know if we've made the Reds better, but at the very least we have made the Reds younger over the first month and a half of our tenure as general manager. And we've got another decision to make as the Reds get a little healthier. TJ Friedel ready to come off of the IL. You can see we've got 5 other outfielders on the team who are all in their mid-20s, just like the 27-year-old Friedel. So maybe we look to trade away one of these players. You can see they're all 3.5 star overall, 3.5 star potential. And Friedel actually with 3-star overall and 3-star potential. Actually, these players are all 2.5, if I could count. He's technically the best of them by the always perfectly accurate star ratings. But we may see if there's one of these players that we want to move on from. There could also be an opportunity to send somebody down to AAA. But quite honestly, with the fact that when we look at our AAA roster right now, We've got Kelnick down there, rounding out his defensive versatility in right field by playing him there every day. But we've got another outfielder who we'd like to have up on the major league roster who's younger than any of those others. So if there's a deal to be made for one of these other outfielders, maybe an opportunity for us to open up a little more cash. And it's going to be an interesting decision, quite honestly. TJ Friedel doesn't have a ton of power, but solid defensive outfielder, fan favorite, decent base runner. Looks like a potentially respectable major league hitter. Stuart Fairchild's got a little bit of home run power, decent defensively, a little bit of speed, making the major league minimum. He's 27 years old. Alex Kirilloff, who we just brought off of the IL, left-handed batter, a little younger at the age of 25. Honestly, doesn't bring as much to the table defensively or speed-wise as either of the other players. Potentially one of the better contact hitters among the bunch, but pretty average at everything else. Jake Fraley, center fielder, pretty versatile, can play anywhere defensively. A little bit of pop, decent eye, 27 years old. He is, set to be making $3.4 million next year. I like him, but that could work against him. Nick Senzel, we talked about, he's already making $2 million. Spark plug personality, going to be making about $4 million next year. And last but not least, there's Will Benson, 24-year-old. Really like the eye, also like the potential home run power. He does have 7 homers already in 121 at-bats this year, even though he's only hitting .215. I honestly think we're probably going to trade away Fraley or Senzel, just because those are the guys who are going to be making bigger money next year potentially. And although they arguably could be the 2 best players, I don't see them being head and shoulders above guys who are just going to be making the minimum. So it's probably a way to free up a little bit of money this year and also potentially even more money next year for us to bring on some players that we really want to build the team around. And this will probably be an unpopular decision with those of you who are Reds fans and know much more about the Reds than I do. But we are going to look to move on from Nick Senzel. He's probably the best defensive center fielder overall. As we talked about, has a good personality. Don't love the lack of home run power and the pretty pedestrian bat. He is hitting .312 in a very small sample size this year, but he's hit .252 and .231 the previous 2 seasons at the major league level, making close to $2 million. As we talked about, probably going to be making around $4 million next year. Feel like Friedel has similar range, better error rating actually, but his arm is not nearly as good. But feel like he is a pretty similar player overall with the below average home run power, decent speed, decent glove. And then we still have Fraley, who can also play center field, although he's not as good defensively. Does have a little more of a home run bat and a pretty decent eye. And he's on target to make $600,000 less next year than Senzel is. So every penny matters. So I think we're going to see what we can get for Senzel. And honestly, it's not going to shock me if we get at least more interesting options when we shop him around than we've gotten for most of the other players that we've been shopping around. Yeah, see? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And it looks like we've got some options here for me at least to think about. So I'm going to spend a little time digging through this wealth of options that we can potentially bring on board to help our team. And in what will be the least surprising news to any of you who have ever watched me over the years, we're going to try going back to our Yankees for Senzel. Clark Schmidt as well as Will Warren are both players we can potentially get. Schmidt, certainly a pitcher that could potentially help us as a starter at the major league level this year. Will Warren, a decent prospect, and during my Yankees series did get some comments from viewers because I believe I traded him away, that he had actually become a pretty good player in some sims that others have done. I don't love his low work ethic, but he is a 23-year-old who looks like he could potentially be a decent starter down the line. We're going to be greedy right now and see if we can get both Schmidt and Will Warren from the Yankees. I can't imagine that they're going to do that, although our assistant GM says it's an okay deal, but we could do better. But if we can get both of those guys on board, I think it's definitely an offer that we should think about doing. So we're going to submit that offer to the Yankees. In the meantime, while we're waiting to try to potentially open up a roster spot for Friedel, we'll send him on a rehab assignment until we potentially do move on from Senzel and open up that spot on the 26-man roster for him. And we're close to being able to make that deal with the Yankees, and there is a little more nuance here. It's not just the half-star players that they're looking for. They're actually looking for someone borderline useful to get the deal done. We're going to add in 32-year-old pitcher Alan Busenitz, who is someone I believe we signed as a free agent this offseason. I can't see what his history is. Actually, he signed with the Reds before we took over. I was trying to figure out how a guy who hadn't played since 2018 was in our system. He's in Double-A this year, where he's been bad. But his ratings actually look decent. But as a guy who's almost 33 years old, he's not part of our future. If that lets us bring on a pitcher who can help us now in Clark Schmidt, and a pitcher who maybe will be able to help us in the future in Will Warren, get a little more salary off the books for this year and next year, and open up a roster spot for Friedel, I think it's a deal we need to make. So we are going to respond, add Alan Busenitz into the deal, and go ahead and complete the trade with the Yankees. You can see our reputation is getting to be quite strong among other GMs. And we've also opened up some decent cash. I do feel like with some of the guys that we've brought on board so far, the new Yankees who are joining us in Schmidt and Warren, but then also the trade that we made for Oswaldo Cabrera, the trade that we made for Kirilloff, the trade that we made for Kelnick. We're getting some pieces. I don't think we've got any perennial all-stars that we've brought on board, but I think we've definitely, with the guys in their early to mid to late 20s that we've brought on board through these trades, somebody that we've traded for will be an all-star at some point over the next few years for the Reds, even if it's just a one-time deal. And David Bell wants to put Clark Schmidt into the rotation, which is fine, but he wants to make Clark Schmidt a goofy follower. So we are not oh, come on. We've lost control of the strategy settings already. This is encouraging me to likely play as GM and manager when I do my long-term playthrough. It says we have control over the player strategy settings. And I believe when I set up the game settings, allow us to be in control of lineups and hiring. So why is it not letting me do what I would like to do? Yeah, because there's nothing where David Bell retains full control. If any of you who are watching can tell me what you think I'm missing where it's not letting me do what I want to do in terms of these roles. I don't want to use him as a follower, but will that let me change that, or is it just going to default back to what David Bell wants to do? Yeah, it's going to make him a follower again. Oh, David Bell, you're making me angry. All right, well, we're going to do the goofy follower thing with Clark Schmidt. It is what it is at this point. Aha, silly me, I'm so ignorant. Setting player strategies, I still had. The default was for David Bell to do that. But I am going to make sure that he knows who is in charge of everything, so I can still get his default views. But now I have the ability to say, Clark Schmidt, you are going to be a starting pitcher, and you are not going to be a goofy follower. And that makes Clark Schmidt the #1 pitcher in our rotation. How about that? Talk about a nice trade for the Reds. So we've got about $2.7 million to potentially spend. We're on pace to make about $7 million this year. Revenue per game is going to be up about 5%. We're well over 500. Things are going well in the early stages for our Reds. We're up by half a game on the Cubs in a extremely tight NL Central at this point. Now it's time for us to start focusing on the game on the field and see what happens over the rest of the month of May. Now that I'm not obsessed with making trades, we're probably going to go 3-11 the rest of the month. And things have been trending in a somewhat more negative direction for the Reds, 26-24, so still a couple games over 500, but no longer in first place. We're actually in third place, even though we're only half a game back. Hunter Greene, the good young starting pitcher, going to be out for about 2 weeks with a hamstring strain. Has not been good this year so far, with a 6.70 ERA, over 47 innings pitched, and a 3-3 record. But certainly think he is still at the age of 23, soon to be 24. Nice 3-pitch arsenal, good personality. If he can improve his movement and control a little bit, still is a potentially important pitcher for the Reds for the future. So we are going to get him on the IL for the time being, and hopefully we'll have him back before the middle of June. And of course, now that I'm just not focused on trades, it hasn't been quite the collapse that I expected, but we do have a losing record now at 26-27, 3 games back, 4th place in the division, and relatively significant injury also for the Reds now. Joey Votto, hamstring strain, going to be out for 4 weeks. Hitting just .235 with 4 homers and 136 at-bats. So the veteran certainly not living up to his big contract, but still with the perfect personality and the captain personality is a great player in the clubhouse for the Reds, and still think with those ratings he should at least be hitting for more power than he has been thus far. He has walked a lot, 24 walks to 136 at-bats, 24 walks in 42 games. Still able to get on base at a .352 clip. So we will miss him, but it will open up a spot in the lineup for the next month or so for us to bring up a younger player from AAA and hopefully give him some playing time. So we'll try to make the most out of it. And one of the guys that we've been focused on in AAA, Christian Encarnacion Strand, is a guy that is only 6 feet tall. He's a natural third baseman. We've been playing him at first down there just to improve his defensive versatility. Not the perfect fit. Would wish he was a couple inches taller. And also, that really nice arm that he has is wasted a bit as a first baseman. So I don't know that that will be where he ultimately ends up. He may not end up being a big time major league player, regardless of where we try to play him defensively, but does have decent gap power and slightly above average home run power for a major leaguer at this point. He's already 23 years old. We're going to bring him up and see what he can do over the next month. Might as well give one of the youngsters a little bit of action. We also may take a look and see if any of our glut of outfielders could maybe play a little bit of first base. Not going to be optimal to have someone learning a position at the major league level, but when we do look at Encarnacion Strand, he's a right-handed hitter, definitely will be a little bit more effective with that higher eye and the slightly higher gap power against a left-handed pitcher. But if we're going to have him up, I'm rethinking this as I talk. We're going to just keep him started as a first baseman, and we're going to see what the youngster can do for us every day. And it looks like we're putting him right into the cleanup spot. So we'll get a chance to see what he can do playing hopefully just about every day for the next month. And we've made it to June 1st, and has not been a good run for the Reds. Definitely struggled over that second half of the month after we stopped churning the roster constantly. Maybe that should tell us something. But after we took 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, since then we've won only once. We took 1 out of 4 against the Cardinals. We're swept by the Cubs. And we've lost the first 2 of a series in Fenway over the last couple of days, which has pushed our record under 500, 4th place in the NL Central, 4.5 back. And we are now lingering 3.5 behind the wild card with a bunch of teams to jump over. So a 7-game losing streak for the Reds has disrupted the good feelings we had through the first month and a half of this playthrough. That said, it's really not all about what the record is this year. I think this is, going to struggle to be a 75-win team. If we can get to 75, I would be quite happy. Goal is to bring on a little bit of talent to help us build around for the future, and then to be able to go in this off season with our team well scouted, the major leagues well scouted, and potentially be able to do a little bit in free agency under the presumption that we will not be exercising the $20 million team option on Joey Votto, even though the fans will be disappointed by that. I just don't think as a 40-year-old who will be turning 41 towards the end of next season that spending $20 million on him is the right financial decision for the Reds, even though perhaps it would be the right emotional decision. So taking a look at our pitching staff here at the beginning of June, Schmidt has not been great since we brought him on board, but Nick Lodolo and Ian Anderson, who we did make a trade for, have definitely been solid starters. Connor Overton, not so much, and then Graham Ashcraft has been acceptable. Alexis Diaz, who's been our closer, has 9 saves. Fernando Cruz, we talked about him. He's kind of the one veteran on the staff, at least in terms of his age, although he honestly doesn't have a ton of major league experience. He's been excellent. Ian Gibaut, or Gibaut. I'm sure one of you Reds fans is cursing me out right now for not knowing who he is or how to pronounce his name. Apologies for that, but he looks like he's been respectable. Lucas Sims, not good. Ricky Karcher, who we just brought up from the minors to replace the injured Hunter Greene, has been a absolute disaster. Luke Weaver, Raver San Martin, and Joel Kuhnel have all been borderline respectable, particularly borderline in the case of Kuhnel. Taking a look at the position players, Jonathan India's cooled off a little bit since that hot April, but still batting over 300 on the season with a 1.2 WAR. Stuart Fairchild hitting 240 with 7 homers. Third baseman Spencer Steer, 257 with 8 homers. Kevin Newman, solid defensive shortstop, hitting 283. Will Benson, right fielder, 244 average with 8 homers. Jake Fraley put up more than half a game of WAR despite starting only 28 games for us. Tyler Stevenson at catcher hitting 238. Karoloff and Oswaldo Cabrera and Kurt Casale all barely above replacement level thus far. Cabrera especially with a 211 average. Little bit disappointing, but still looks like there's room for him to grow. Hopefully we can turn him into a useful major league player. And then we've got 3 guys in Encarnacion, who's obviously only been up for a couple days at this point. Friedel, who's back from the IL. And then utility infielder Jason Fosler, who are borderline replacement level for all 3 of them. So not the most impressive offense in the league by any measures, I'm guessing, when we look at the team statistics. Yeah, 12th in the National League in runs allowed for the pitching staff. We're somehow 3rd in the National League in runs scored. So the offense has definitely been better than I would have expected given what we just looked at. Not a ton of players having real good seasons. We've still, that said, been a little bit unlucky. We should be 27 and 28 rather than 26 and 29. But having gone through the players that I just looked at, being 3rd in the National League in runs scored is a bit surprising to me. Not going to shock me if we fall off the run scoring pace a bit. And if we do that, hopefully the pitching will be a little better in the coming months to hopefully counteract that a bit. But after a winning record as of the end of April, we were 11 and 15 in the month of May. And as we've talked about, with 7 straight losses, are now 3 games below 500, 4th place in the division. We were 11 and 8 in the month until that 7-game losing streak to end the month of May. So definitely not finishing the month of May strong. Hopefully we can do better in the month of June. And we'll see how we do in the month of June, close in on the trade deadline, the All-Star break, the upcoming draft in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a great day.